Hello, in this video I wanted to give you a walkthrough of the create and document a local app deployment assignment, since I want you to be able to focus on the final project maintenance portions of week 4, and I know some of you are feeling a bit intimidated by using Docker. Even though you have all the skills to do this assignment and you have all the instructions that you need, it may be nice just to have a little bit of a walkthrough for this one. So I'm just going to show you how actually simple it is. If you can kind of get every step right along the way and pay attention to detail, it should come together pretty quickly. So first I'm going to just emphasize how you should approach assignments when you open them up. So rather than just jumping right in, it can be good to read all the instructions, because I would not put instructions here for you to read if they weren't important. So let's just go over. This says follow along as you take all the video quizzes. So obviously I made those, so I know the content of those, but you would want to go through and do that. Create a new public Git repository and name it something like ITP Docker. Don't add collaborators. Protect the main branch from unassigned commits. Your repository will be used and evaluated by another student. So if you want to make sure that you're not going to be embarrassed of what you give for another student to see, you should have these exact files in this structure: Docker file, Docker compose, a readme, a scripts folder within a init.sh. All other files should be git ignored, even those created by scripts below. Your init script should create a folder structure like this, so it has volumes and then a final project folder, so on and so forth. These files are going to be coming from Nginx. Create a temporary Docker container from Nginx to copy out the configuration files to both volumes. So that's something you would have seen in the videos. You'll need to manually change some of the default files. Okay, so now manual changes to those files. Changing occurrences of port 80 by 7901, replace the existing location block with these, and it says your GitHub repo name, so we'll have to replace that with whatever GitHub repo we're using. Volumes, homepage, confd, default conf, simply change the ports. Index HTML, replace the contents of the body. So it's giving pretty detailed instructions of what changes to make there, so we can do those one by one. The Docker file should be based on some Nginx image. Copy your built pages site from an additional context that references your final project Git repo. So not the Git repo for the for this deployment, but actually the final project for the class. Make sure it's public to the appropriate location for serving by Nginx. So we're going to act like we are GitHub Pages and serve this website locally on our computer. Don't change the default entry point or command from Nginx. Your compose file, the Docker compose file, should specify exactly 3 services: the FP service, the HP service, and the Watchdog service. So we're going to build the Docker file, name the image, add a context and an additional context. So there's a link explaining how to do additional contexts. And then name the container expose localhost 8081. Use 2 volumes, one for the Nginx conf file and one for the conf.d folder. So all the structure was listed up here. The HP service uses an Nginx from Docker Hub without building a custom image. Name the container expose no ports. Use 2 volumes, just like we did here. Watchdog service lets someone shell into the compose stack and curl for different services for testing. Use an Alpine image without building a custom image. Name it. Use no ports. Restart unless stopped. Ensure the command is a shell. Implement IT flags. No volumes. Your README should explain the architecture. When a request comes into localhost 8081, where does it go? How are services connected? Who serves what HTML? Where's the HTML coming from? Explain exactly how to use your project from scratch. Mention any prerequisites, mention where to run any init scripts, mention any manual changes you might have to make, but can you automate those changes so that you don't have to document them? Be sure to mention how to start and stop the compose stack, and follow your own instructions with a fresh clone to make sure they work. Test your app by visiting localhost 8081. You should get to your home page, you should click the link to your project, you should get to your fully functional project. If your app is not functional when following your instructions, expect to receive a 0 for this assignment. Submit your repository URL for this repository here. Okay, so if you read all those instructions, it only takes about 5 minutes. It hasn't even been 5 minutes yet. Maybe you don't fully understand those, but at least you have a sense of everything that's going to happen here. So first step was create a public Git repo and name it something like ITP Docker. So I'm going to go to GitHub, click on new repository. I'm going to call this Docker static app deployment, and I could give it a description, a deployment for a front-end portfolio. I'm going to make this private because I'm not sharing this with anyone, but you should make it public. I'll add a README. I will add a no git ignore template, and I will add the, let's just say the GPL v3, so you can learn more about licenses if you want to see what different ones do. But this is a pretty permissive license, so if someone were to get a hold of this code, they could use it for a lot of different things without restriction. You might want to put a proprietary license in here if you want to restrict people from using your code for certain things. Alright, so now we have a repo and we can clone it. Could have started from the local side, but I'm just going to start from the Git side, and I'll go to cd into my code folder, and then I will git clone this into ITP Docker. I'll just rename the local repo to ITP Docker and make sure I type clone correctly, and I'll code into ITP Docker. Alright, now I'm going to split screen this with the instructions, and so I need to add no collaborators. I need to protect the main branch from unsigned commits. So for that I will need to go to settings and rules, rule sets, new rule set, new branch rule set, unsigned commit protection, and enforcement status. I'm going to leave it disabled because I have unsigned commits locally to test your rules, and then but you will want this enabled, active. Bypass list, no. Target is going to be let's just include all branches, so that'll include the main branch for sure. And then we want to make sure that this requires signed commits and create the rule, and I'll use a passkey to verify my identity here, and the rule set is created. Now I should be able to push to this even though I have unsigned set up locally, because I disabled that rule, but you will want to enable this because you will have commit signing set up on your local. So that checkbox is done. I'm going to make sure this is professional enough that another student can look at it. We need exactly these files in this structure. So I'm going to, it says, it actually doesn't say to have a license in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that license to make sure it meets the requirements. I have the README. I'm going to have a file called Docker file. I'm going to have a file called Docker compose.yaml. I'm going to have a file called, or a folder called scripts, and I'm going to have a file called init.sh, and Control-Shift tick mark. I'm going to make sure that that is executable, even though that's not necessary for Git Bash. So I'm going to go chmod, add the X privilege to /script/init.sh. Alright, so that should be executable now. I can do an ls-la scripts, and I should see the X privilege on init.sh. Seems like not necessarily. Oh, and I did realize something that prevents dot completion. So if I say like ./script/init.sh and I can't hit tab to complete, the reason is because Git Bash is looking for the shebang, which basically is a little comment that says what shell or what interpreter should interpret this script. So it could be the Python interpreter, it could be the Go interpreter. In this case, it's going to be Bash. So I'll say add a shell shebang, also called a hash bang. And that's going to be a decent shebang. If we do sh, that should work as well. Usually the default shell is alias to sh. So let's see if we can hit tab and we get tab completion on init.sh. And again, chmod might not do anything on git bash, but it will on other systems. So I have tab completion, which is good. All other files should be get ignored. So let's see if we can even get help with that to do new file.get ignore. I'll say ignore any file that is not scripts/init.sh, Docker file, readme.md. Actually, I'm just going to use the pound file. That is not pound file, scripts, init.sh, pound file, Docker file, pound file, Docker compose, or pound file, readme. And except it says ignore star and then make exceptions for the following. I don't even know if this is right, so I'm hoping that this does what I intend, but it was a good use of Copilot and it doesn't look super dangerous to me. So I'm going to get status. It seems like it sees that I deleted the license. I'm going to hit Control B to hide that left bar. Git add dot, get status, and I see new file, Docker file, license, Docker compose YAML. We didn't get rid of our README, which is good. And then if I were to create a new file like hopefully ignored, then if I did a git add dot and a git status, I shouldn't see that get added because it should be under my ignore rules for ignore everything else. And it's gray here, so that seems that's the case. So I'll go ahead and not git ignore, but I'll delete the hopefully ignored file. Looks good. So you see how I'm taking a little bit of time. We're now at like 12 minutes, but taking time to follow all of the requirements that are listed in this assignment description. So the init script should create a folder structure like this and create a temporary. I'm just going to copy these instructions so that I can go ahead and look at them. So I'm going to new line, paste those instructions, and I'm just going to comment them out. That way Copilot can help me out as well. So in case right now I don't have a volumes, let's see, Control B. Let's just make this full screen so we can focus on it. And I'll actually Control B to show this. So right now we don't have the volumes folder, but essentially we want a folder called volumes to get created, but we don't want to have to do that manually. We want our script to be able to do it. And if it's there already, we might want to delete it. But essentially to create a folder to begin with, the way that we would do that is with mkdir, and P means path. You can do nested folders instead of just doing the top level folder. So if we check our instructions, we want to have final project, homepage, config, and home, and those are going to get copied from Nginx. So we essentially, to copy from Nginx, if we try to copy something and rename it at the same time, or with a different name, we can run into challenges if the folder already exists. So we essentially want volumes, final project, and config, and then volumes, homepage, config, and home. Those folders should be set up for us so that we can pull things from Nginx and copy them into there. But we shouldn't have these folders in here created, because then we'll have a collision with what's coming from Nginx. And since this is a folder, this folder might get nested inside of this existing folder. So that's just an intricacy of how copying and moving works in Linux command line shells. So we'll do mkdir-p, and we'll do volumes, final project, config, and then we'll do volumes, final project, let's see, was that, nope, homepage, And I think there is a little shortcut here. I think we can do something like this, but we should probably test if this shortcut actually works. So I'm going to go ahead and run /script/init.sh. I get tab completion because of that shebang. And if I look at volumes, I have final project, config, and HTML. It worked. So this is like saying make one with config at the end and one with HTML at the end. So that did exactly what I wanted. And once this gets all filled up, now we're going to have a problem because these could potentially exist. So I'm going to want to remove anything that's inside of those. So after we mkdir, if this already exists, it'll just give us a warning or an error, but it shouldn't stop the execution of the script. So then we can go ahead and remove all the contents of that. Remove recursive force of volumes final project config /star. That's what we want, everything inside config. And then in the same thing of remove recursive force volumes homepage config star, and let's see if we can actually do this little trick here of config HTML /star. So to test that, I'm going to throw a file in here inside config and throw a file inside of HTML, and then I'm going to go ahead and run this script, and it seems to have deleted those. So that worked exactly like I wanted. And I'll double check that I can create a file in here and that gets deleted as well when I run the script. And it does. So now we have a little automation of creating this folder structure, and you'll notice it's getting get ignored, but that's fine because that was in the instructions to get ignore. So I'm going to close all to the right, and when we check what's next, we need to create a temporary Docker container from Nginx to copy out the configuration files to both volumes in the HTML folder to just the homepage volume. Okay, so makes sense. We're going to double check Docker Hub, and we're going to go to Nginx and pick a tag. And we just want a small one, so an Alpine, stable Alpine 320 should be a pretty good option. Let's see if we can get Alpine 321. Alpine 321 is good. So just for good measure, we'll do a Docker pull on that, and then we can run a temporary container temp nginx. That looks good. Run in detached mode, and let's do rm so we don't have to remove it ourselves. And then we can do a docker cp temp nginx, so inside that container's file system, the etc nginx conf, and okay, so it's guessing where that is, Copilot is, but let's make sure we can confirm what the structure of this is. If we double check the documentation for nginx, we see that the config file should be somewhere in here, nginx.conf. So yeah, we know the location is going to be etc nginx conf, and it turns out if we inspect that, we could go ahead and just run a temporary Docker container for a sanity check. So let's do this command, and that should run in the background, and of course Docker isn't running, so that's not going to work. Start up Docker desktop. So we just want to make sure that those config files that we're trying to copy out are actually existing inside the container in the structure that we expect. And if you're wondering, since these are both inside the nginx conf directory, like they're both inside and etc nginx.conf and etc nginx conf.d, which the D stands for directory, so it's just a directory of additional config files that are actually included by this conf file, and you would see that if you looked at them. But you might wonder, why can't we just copy the entire nginx folder? And the reason is because there's symbolic links, meaning sort of like, think of them like shortcuts on your desktop. On your Windows computer, they're not really, the files aren't really there, they're just a link to some other file elsewhere, and so we have to very specifically copy the file and then the folder, the conf.d folder that we want, rather than copying the entire contents folder. So go ahead and run this temporary container, and we should see that running in our containers. We can go ahead and look at files, and we'll see that in Etsy Nginx, we see the conf.d folder, which has a default.conf file, and then we have to see the nginx.conf. And if we go ahead and look at those folders, we could do that in a number of ways with a volume, or we could just cat inside of here. So if we did like a cat of Etsy Nginx conf.d default.conf, we can see the default configuration file. Creates a server, has a bunch of stuff we probably don't understand and a bunch of comments. And then we can also do a cat of /Etsy Nginx nginx.conf, and we'll notice, I just know this from experience, that the default conf actually includes all conf files inside the conf.d. So you can get this confusing bug where you're changing things in the nginx conf file, which starts here. You can change things in here and you're like, why isn't it changing? Well, it's subsequently including other conf files, which are then potentially overriding the configurations you put in here. So what is all this gobbledygook? This is just Nginx configuration settings that happen to be used by this app. You know, any app could have its own configuration files. This is just what Nginx has, and you'd have to check the Nginx documentation to understand how to use this in detail. But the instructions are going to give you how to use this for the purposes of what you're doing. So we see those two files are in fact there at the place we expect, and so now we can be confident that our shell script is going to do what we expect. Otherwise, we're just kind of poking around in the dark. So we have this file we're going to want. We could say that file, we'll just take the entire directory. And then we also are going to want the Etsy Nginx nginx conf file, and that is in fact correct. So we'll do a docker cp temp nginx etsy conf.d to volumes final project config. So that's going to take this directory and it's going to copy it. When you have a directory with a target of another directory, this directory is going to go inside this directory. Whereas if this were a file and this were a file, that file would become renamed as it would as this file name on the right. So we'll do a docker cp for the nginx conf to a file local. So we're renaming this file of nginx conf to be the file called config, except that's not what we want. We want config to contain conf.d and nginx conf. So here we're copying conf.d into config, that is correct, but here we're copying nginx conf. I guess technically, because this is a directory, this file will get copied into here, but to be extra explicit with what we're doing, we can say we're actually renaming this file to be called this same name on the right. And then final piece is, because in the temp container we're actually adding this HTML folder as well, or sorry, the homepage folder, we have the HTML folder as well. We're going to want to copy out the default HTML for Nginx. And so if we want to see that, we can actually see here the default location that it puts that is /user/share/nginx/html. So we can take that path and check inside the shell. We can say ls and we can paste that path to see what's in there. So we have two files, a 50.xhtml and an index.html, and if we cat the that path /index, we'll see the standard Nginx HTML we're used to, and so that's actually where it's getting that. It's serving it just from a folder in the file system of the container. So we can go ahead and copy that out as well. Whoops, so we have, copy this for context. So we want to take docker cp temp user share nginx html, and we want to take that and copy it to volumes homepage html. Okay, so now we have a potential bug, because HTML is a folder, we have a folder called HTML, and we are going to proceed to copy HTML to a folder target. That's actually going to create a nested folder, HTML/HTML. Just have to trust me on that one. It's a common bug with folder copying and moving, is that you accidentally nest something rather than renaming it. So how do we solve that bug? We essentially have to copy into the homepage directory, since we're comfortable with using the original name of HTML. We can copy into the homepage directory, but that means that that this should essentially rename this HTML folder to this, but we could also just remove any contents of the homepage directory so that we don't have that HTML, which would make this a little bit simpler. But just to be since either approach will work, we can try it this way and just test it. So let's go ahead and test that. And of course we've made a mistake because we haven't cleaned up, and there's probably already a container running with that name. So let's stop that container. It should remove itself, and let's try that again. And this script should be able to run an infinite number of times. So we got our conf.d, config conf.d, default.conf, nginx.conf. We got our HTML coming out just fine, even though the folder already existed, because we copied into the parent, which overwrote, essentially renamed this directory as this. So it's essentially just taking the contents of that and putting it inside the existing folder. And only issue we have is we only copied these config files to one of the volumes. So we were actually supposed to put that in both config folders. So we have a bug. And we'll do that by taking this, copying it, and all we have to do is change homepage in here for final project, because the structure is the same. So now we can also clean up after ourselves by doing a docker stop temp nginx, which we didn't do before, so this one's still running. I'll go ahead and stop that for the past run, and then I can run the script. Everything should clean up when it's done, and it did. And we see a lot of success. We see our whole structure here. All the configuration files look fine, and we should see that we can either rerun this with no issues because it's going to delete and recopy. We should also see that if we never had this to begin with, the script should work just the same way. It shouldn't depend on any of our local state here. And we see that is also the case. So all those folders and files, see, it seems complicated when you see it all listed, but you're automating it. So it's actually just a couple lines of shell script, and then you're done, and it's completely repeatable. So I'm going to delete those comments and delete this. Just kind of separate those into clusters based on what's happening here. And it looks good. Now, what's next? We're currently at 28 minutes, and we're getting there. So it says we should manually change some of the default files. So the final project conf.d default conf, you need to change 2 occurrences of the port to 7901. What would be even better, and you can do this manually, and you can put that in your README, but I don't like to do things manually because it's a pain, and it's error prone because a human is going to do it. So let's have it automated if possible. So once we do this docker stop, let's see if we can replace. Let's look at that file and see what we would manually change. So you need to change final project default conf. You need to change these port 80s to be port 7901. So let's see if we have 80 anywhere else in the file. So just in a comment and then the 2 places we want to change it. So we could do this manually, just type this right here and save the file because it's going to be a volume, but we could also do a find and replace. So find and replace 80 with 7901 in volumes final project config slash conf.d default.conf. Alt Z to wrap that around. And let's see if we can do that. So let's see if Copilot can say the best bash tool for find and replace is sed. Okay, sure. Let's see if sed will do this. Let's see if we can do a man sed. We don't have man installed, so man sed Linux. Sed is a stream editor for filtering and transforming text. That seems plausible. So let's see if we can do sed-I, whatever that means. We're going to change 8071 globally, probably, in this particular file. Let's go ahead and just run that one command and see if we can watch our default conf, see if those changes happen in real time. And it seems like they changed, so that step is now automated. Replace the location block with these two. Okay, so now we need to check the location block. We see location. We have a couple locations happening. So let's find if we can control F while highlighting this. No, we'll control C and then control F, control V to paste that. So we only have one occurrence of this exact text here. So let's copy this exact text. And since we're in a script, we can probably save this as a variable. So let's say location lock underscore block equals, and we'll put this in, I think single quotes would be appropriate here. I don't know if the new lines will be an issue. So I'm gonna comment out all of this other stuff so that we can just focus on what's down here. So location block is this. Let's see if we can just use grep. Use grep to find this. Not sure if this is going to work. So we're going to run the script so we get that variable as well. Lock command not found. Okay. Say fix the quote marks as and new lines as needed. Okay, it doesn't really seem to have done much here. But there's no error. I think we might need like backslash for the new line, just to say we're going to go into a new line. Let's see. All right, let's try that. Not sure if it's finding this. because we have a certain number of tab characters and such. So let's try to copy this exactly. Let's see, count how many times lock block is in the file. Let's do grep and output as a number. Let's try it. 6 times. Well, that's not good. We also have this only once, so we need to replace this. We replace that with new lock block is going to have to be this. Let's see if sed can do this for us. Unterminated S command. Do we have awk? Which awk? We do have awk. Which Perl? Do we have Perl? We do have Perl as well. So let's see if this Perl approach will work. Copy that and paste it. Alright, check this, and we got location switched out. So that should be good there. Now we've got a little bit of a template to work with. It was hard to get going there, but now that we have a template, we can keep moving with that same approach. So we're also going to have this that we need to add after that. So let's see if we can just replace this again. Let's do our whole script from top to bottom so that we can get all of the replacements happening. And then we'll comment out this portion. Now we've got back to normal. Let's copy this portion and comment back in this, and then we will, oh, we accidentally weren't done there, so that continued to run. So I'll comment this out again. Let's just see if we can do it blind. May fail, but it's worth a try. So we'll replace the location block, which is, it's important that it's tabbed over here. So we're going to keep all those tabs in there. I'm going to replace that location block with the same location block except with proxy pass is the content. And then we also want to have the location block for the your GitHub repo name. So now I'm going to have to pick a GitHub repo to use, github.com. Let's see, I'm going to use courses, just a Pages site that's at /courses, and it gives it's just a Pages site that I made that has some grades I got in courses, so it's a good example. I'm going to use this repo because it's also public. So mine is called courses, so that is what we're going to use there. And the alias will be the normal user share Nginx HTML folder, and it'll be looking for an index file in there like normal. So we're going to replace this with these two things. And now let's see if we can run our scripts top to bottom. Will it do that replacement? Will it replace the ports? Yes. Will it replace this? Yes. Okay, great. So again, a little bit iffy with the Perl scripts. I have no idea how to use Perl, but got a little help with that. We had Perl installed in Git Bash, and so we were able to do that find and replace and automate that step, so we don't have to put a manual step inside of our README. Let's see where we were with the instructions here. Did we lose the assignment? So we'll need to manually change some files. Okay, got that. Now we need to manually change the ports to 6969 in the home page. So that's easy because we're just rinse and repeating with just changing a little bit from our sed command here. So here we're just changing, we want to replace the 80s in the same type of file except for the home page. So we'll go /homepage in the volumes for homepage, and we want to replace port 80 with port 6969. Looks good, and we'll need to test that, of course, but I'm pretty confident that that should work. And then we want to replace the body of the index.html file with this. So I'm going to copy this for Copilot to have the context, and I'll comment it out. So we'll do, let's see what that file looks like to get a sense of what we're gonna hit into. So the home page, the index.html is going to contain this. Conveniently, body is on has everything on new lines, so we could also just copy this entire body and we're going to replace it with a different body. So I will paste this exactly as it was shown, and then I'll use my format of echoing that text to a little virtual file. End of file means that this is the beginning of the file, this is the end of the file, and we're going to just copy all of this text to a new little virtual file that's going to be a variable, and we'll call this old body, old HTML body, and then we'll do new HTML body as well, and that's going to be body, and inside of here we simply want to give our new content, which is this. So that, we'll close the body tag, end of file, close paren, there we go. And then we simply want to do Perl. Hopefully this is using the same format we used up here. And volumes, homepage, HTML, index HTML, looks good. Now I'm going to watch that file and I'm going to see if we run our script, does that file get changed? And there it got changed. Great. So it replaced that. Oh, except we have a bug. Your GitHub repo name needs to actually be linked to my GitHub repo name. So this is a point where I could put a variable in my code. Since I have this in a couple places, that would be good practice. Or I could just manually change it wherever I see it. So let's just make some good practice here. Let's see if we can ask Copilot. Pound selection, can we change courses to be a shell variable called courses, called repo name, or FP repo name? Sure, you can change the path to be a shell variable. Here's how you can modify it. Obviously we need that FP repo name. We'll take that here and we'll do courses because that's mine. Yours will be different. And then supposedly we can just use a shell variable right here. I'll believe it when I see it. And then we can also use that variable again down in here. So we're going to want courses to go here, so we will paste that $repo FP repo name usage of that variable so that that gets replicated here and gets replicated here. Fingers crossed that this is going to work. If we see courses go up here, we know we were successful with that. So that worked. And notice the trailing slash there, that's important. So we make sure there's a trailing slash on that link. So we're looking pretty good so far. I want to probably double check that we're also getting the conf.d. Okay, we're getting courses location here, the conf.d, and the other one we're just getting the port change. And what else did we need to do? That's all the manual changes, so now we don't have to put any manual instructions in our README. That's nice. Your Docker file should be based on some Nginx image. Alright, so let's go ahead and maybe skip to some documentation. We need to explain the architecture of our app. So we don't understand that yet necessarily, but we should explain exactly how to use our project from scratch. So let's start there. Put this to the left or to the right, and then we'll put the README, Control B, and put the README up here so we can edit that. We'll call this Docker static app deployment for NJG 4NE. I'll put that as a subheading. This is a local deployment to serve the GitHub pages app of njg4ne.github.io/courses, and I'll make that a link as well. So I will wrap it in parentheses and then square brackets, or is it the other way around? Let's preview. Yeah, it's the other way around. So we'll wrap that in square brackets and then in parentheses place that. And then we can click that link, perhaps. Nope. We need https://. There we go. And what is this? Say prerequisites. docker said docker-v docker version, so I'll say docker version of this. We'll say plus. Hopefully you can get a newer version. Windows 11. We'll say Windows. It should probably work on any OS, but we can maybe specify what we used. You'll need a bash shell, and you'll need Perl, you'll need sed, and all those basic bash shell, sh shell with typical tools, and Perl. I don't know if that's a typical tool to need, so I'll tell them they need Perl. And I'll say testing notes. This was tested on Windows 11 Home. Tested with this Docker. Tested with git bash. Alright, preview. Looks good. And then we're going to leave an empty architecture section. TBD. So we probably should have committed our code earlier when we made the file structure. But let's go ahead and see git status. Let's do a somehow we're ignoring the init sh file, I believe. We need that, yeah. So we need to include, don't ignore scripts. I think it was init.sh, right? Maybe I need to not ignore scripts as well. But we can ignore script/star. Alright, so there we go. We're ignoring script/star, not ignoring scripts, ignoring script/star, except not ignoring init.sh. So we could put a separate git ignore, but that shouldn't be needed. So we're going to git add docker compose YAML, docker file, and really we shouldn't have the changes of this. So I'm just going to, normally we should have done this earlier, so I'm just going to cut this, save, and git status, git add dot, git commit, git status, git commit -m matching desired file structure. Before we do that, should we git add.git ignore? Okay, where's git ignore? Git ignore itself is being ignored, so we have to unignore git ignore. So not slash dot get ignore. Git add dot get status. Okay. Git commit dash m matching desired file structure. Now I'm going to paste back that stuff. And I guess the README also, we had some content that wasn't really supposed to go in that commit, but it's not the end of the world. So testing notes, git bash docker Windows 11 home. Double check here what else to do. Explain how to run it from scratch. Prerequisites, where to run any init scripts, any manual changes. We eliminated this need because we automated those. Mention how to start and stop the compose stack. We haven't gotten that far yet. So we'll say, make a usage. Say initialize. Let's do a numbered list here. We do one, I think it's one dot space. Okay, one dot space, one. Initialize the file structure and volumes. So they will triple tick bash chmod plus x script slash init.sh. Let's copy relative path. And they will do dot slash. Put forward slashes there for generality. And then two, they will, can I keep this on the tab level? I guess I can. Then we will probably do some up the compose stack. TBD. And 3 down the compose stack. We'll say to up the compose stack, do TBD, and to down the compose stack, also do TBD for now, to be determined. Say git add readme git commit -m adding instructions to readme. Okay. So we've got our initialization hopefully all tidied up. We'll git add scripts, git status, git commit -m, adding an initialization, an init script to set up the FS, the file system. Alright, and then we can go ahead and move on. So we want to use the Nginx Alpine 321 image, most likely. That'll be a good one to use. So we need a Docker file, which should be based on some Nginx image, and copy copy your built pages site from an additional context. So we'll go to Docker file, Control B to hide that left side, and we will paste this image in here from Nginx Alpine 321. And I'll go ahead and add a target as, we'll say as Nginx default. That'll be our target. This is not something we have to do. And copy your pages from an additional context that you call final project that references your final project Git repo. Whoa. So that's a lot of details. So let's check up on additional context. So additional context defines a list of named contexts the image builder should use during the image build. So in Docker Compose, we can specify these like this. And that additional context should be called final project. So let's see how we can use additional context called final project and copy out the path of, let's go to GitHub, we'll go to courses, and that is going to have the deployment directory where GitHub Pages is looking for my built site is going to be this. So this is the folder where I'm going to want to pull from. So this is at the root of the repo, and it's called docs. So if I add that additional build context, I want to copy out the Alt-Z to wrap around the docs file, docs folder, contents, to the, let's say, default Nginx HTML folder. That seems plausible. Is that what we're actually doing? Says to the appropriate location for serving by Nginx, not a nested folder with the name of your repo. So yeah, to the default Nginx folder, which is /user share Nginx HTML. We know that from the Docker Hub documentation. So we'll say copy and say copy recursively so we probably want to copy docs/star, maybe just docs, copy docs, but this is a folder, so we may have the issue. So you docs/star to HTML, maybe that should work. And expose port 80. Port 80 should probably already be exposed. Don't change the default entry point or command. Alright. So let's see if we can build this image. Docker build -t FPI, I'll call it FP image latest, and we'll say dot for the context, and it says additional context failed, so we need to give it that context for the Git repo. I'm going to give the HTTP one. So we'll say Control-I, #terminal last command, but pass additional context of this. So that's wrong. We need to pass as command line flag. Still wrong, so we're going to close that out. Docker CLI. We need Docker build. We need additional contexts. Build context. Okay, so we're going to do this -t -- build context of name equals path. Final project is the name equals path is the GitHub repo. Let's see if we can fix that command. Terminal last command fix. So it says we need to do final project HTTPS. I guess it needs the main branch specified. I don't think that's correct, but we can see. I think that should be implied. Oh, we don't have from final project specified in here, so we let Copilot take the wheel a little bit too much here. So let's say from equals final project, and it's going to be docs/star. Copy that to Nginx HTML. Let's try the first command we did with just the Git repo. And now that seems to be working. Now the test is, when we look in that image, are we going to find what we expect? So we can try docker run --rm fpi, which was our image name. And then we can check that has files, and did we get our GitHub repo stuff copied where we expect. So we should check user share Nginx HTML. So we see _data, we see most of the things that we want here, but we might be missing some stuff here. Docs contains, I don't see _app, I don't see edu, so there might be an issue, it might be a bug here. So let's stop this and try again, where we're just going to copy docs to HTML. Let's copy to Nginx, and then let's run mv user share Nginx docs, and let's rename that to HTML. So we'll rebuild. And it says can't rename, no such file or directory. Maybe we copy docs. Seems like that's going to go into HTML. Can we copy recursive? Okay, so that seemed to work. So now we're getting underscore app underscore data. It just copied this, and rather than putting it inside of HTML, which was what I was afraid of, it copied it so that its name was HTML. The only issue might be that now it didn't delete any of those files that were in there already. So you see the 50.x HTML is still there, and that was 12 days ago. So we might want to remove run rm nginx html/star and see if we can get that cleared out. So we rebuilt the image, and then we're going to run it. Take a look, files, user, share, nginx, HTML, and we have no 50.x, and we have our same structure that we see for that docs folder that was in GitHub for our courses. So that's exactly what we wanted, and we should expect now that this can be served by nginx, just like GitHub Pages would serve it. So I'll stop that container, Control C. We'll remove itself, and now we have something that the Docker Compose file can use. So that image is done, getting set up in the Docker file. So we can git add Docker file and git commit -m Docker file updated for serving a Pages site. Now we can go to the Compose file, and we'll see that the Compose file should have 3 services. The FP service builds our Docker file, names the image, adds a context and an additional context. So we'll copy this, put that here, and comment it out. So we'll go services. First one's going to be the FP service. The build context dot, yes. Docker file, yes, but that's also implied because that's the default name. Then we'll want additional contexts. I think this was right. This was linked in here. It may not be picked up by that extension, but yes, this is the format we want right here. So additional context, tab that over, and we're going to want this to be pound git repo from whatever that git repo was. Right there. Say final project is, how was the format, equals. Okay, so final project equals they say GitHub project.git. That's the format we're going to use. And then what else do we have here? Name the container, expose to localhost on 8081, use 2 volumes, one for the conf file and one for the conf.d file. So we'll do image is going to be called something custom njg 4ne slash final project image colon Docker compose build tag super custom. And then we'll do container name is going to be FPC. Name the container. Oh wait, builds, names the image. It doesn't say what to name the image, so I'm going to name the image that custom way, exposed to localhost on 8081. So that's going to be ports from 8081 to 80 in the container. The volumes are going to be /. We're going to need to copy final project config conf.d is going to be the first one, so we'll copy relative path of this and that and that to, this is going to be relative to the compose file, remember, so it'll be /volumes / final project config conf.d is going to go to etc nginx. Is that right? Conf.d? etc nginx conf.d, yes, that's correct. And then we'll do the same for nginx conf. Yes, correct. And that's 2 volumes, so we're done. Depends on, let's see, does it depend on anything? This may not be specified in the instructions, but we can see that in the default conf, this is going to call the HP service, the homepage service, on the / and on the /courses it's going to go to the basic HTML that came from the Git repo. So it actually does depend on the HP service. So we can specify that so that it makes sure that it starts those up in the correct order. So we'll do the HP service, and then we'll create the HP service as well. So we can do services and then HP service. Which is going to be coming from Nginx Alpine 321. The container name can be HPC. Doesn't need any ports, I don't believe. The HP service uses Nginx, names the container, expose no ports, use 2 volumes, and 2 volumes for this, and 1 for the HTML. So we need 3 volumes in total. Volumes, final project, config, conf.d, etc conf.d, final project, config, nginx conf, etc nginx conf, and then we need 1 more of volumes, final project, HTML, user share, nginx, HTML. That is correct. Ports, no, it does not need any ports. Then we'll have the watchdog service. That one is just going to be Alpine 321. So we'll take that. Whoops, wrong one. So image Alpine 321.3, container name watchdog C, and it's going to need, we need to implement -it, so we'll do tty true and standard and open true. The default command should be the shell. Restart unless stopped. Expose no ports. no volumes. Ensure the command is a shell. Alright, so let's see if we can get this thing up and running. Control Shift tick mark. Go Docker compose up. Let's just try the Watchdog service. Make sure that one works. Additional context is not supported. Maybe this needs to be under build. There we go. Attaching to Watchdog C. Let's do that in the background. And then we'll do Docker attach Watchdog SVC. Oh, Docker compose attach or Docker attach on the C. And there we go. ls curl. We can't curl anything because they're not running. We just upped one part of the service, not the entire, or one part of the compose stack, not the entire stack, just one thing. And so we can Docker compose down. So if we got everything right here, our volume should be hooked up to the volumes we created with init. We're gonna say, we could also say that this one depends on the FP service, which then depends on the HP service, so that we can make sure that we don't try to curl until everything is up and running. So we'll Docker compose up-d, pull access denied for final project image. That's fine, yeah, this is a made-up image name. Conflict FPC is already in use by container. So we have another compose stack conflicting here, so I'm going to delete that one. So just go ahead and delete everything, honestly. Alright, so now our stack is up and we've exposed this port, so let's click on it. And it didn't load, so we have an issue, a bug. Can we go to courses in there? Seems not. Let's see what we can do inside the Watchdog service. Can we curl the HP service? We don't even have curl. Can we do apk add curl? And can we do curl? Nope, we can't connect on port 80 to the HP service. So what's wrong there? Could not connect to localhost. What about our mounts, nginx conf.d, default.conf, nginx conf. So those are getting mounted fine. Oh, we're mounting final project here, but then the home page we're mounting final project again. That's not what we want. We want to actually mount the home page one, right? And we don't need HTML inside of this one, so I'm not sure where that happened. Probably because we placed this here. So we can go ahead and fix this to home page, but let's first Control D and Docker compose down the compose stack before we change the config. And then we're just going to fix that to be home page. Two separate sets of volumes here, one for each container or each service in the compose stack. Alright, Docker compose up-d. Now let's check if we go to final project. Still not hitting anything on slash. What if we go to slash courses? Not hitting anything on slash courses. So that's not what we want. Let's check here. What are we expecting to run the final project on? We have default conf, we're expecting to be running on 7901. So if we do curl localhost 7901 inside that container, what's going to happen? We're hitting it, so it's giving us the correct thing inside here as well. So slash is hitting the oh, and there's probably our bug. So we're on final project is on 7901. We made the assumption that we were still going to be on port 80 inside the container in our compose stack, but actually we're going to be on port 7901. So if we check here, we're actually exposing final project service 8081 to 80. We need to connect this to 7901. And so since it's not changing a service name, we can change that without downing. We can just up and it'll recreate that service. And if we're lucky, now everything will play nicely together. So click our link here and we get the home page. Hooray. Please visit the courses page. We click on courses, we go to courses / we get to the GitHub Pages site, and it functions just like the GitHub Pages site did. And if we go back, we can go back to that home page, and this is being served by that other container. So everything seems to be working nicely, and we can double check that the Watchdog the Watchdog service works correctly by saying docker compose attach watchdog service, and then we can apk, just the package manager, apk add curl, so we have the curl command, and then we can curl the FP service. We should be able to get the HP service is hosting on port, let's check, on config conf.d, this one, or default.conf is 6969, so we should be able to curl HP service : 6969, and we should get that home page. So that's what we expect. Now for the FP service, we should be able to curl 7901 and get redirected to the HP service to get the home page. So we'll do FP service : 7901. We should get that home page again, but then if we go to 7901/courses, we should get, so courses then now we're getting that app root for the courses page. And so that is coming from the FP service itself, whereas the proxy pass inside the default conf, you'll just have to trust me on this, was passing to the HP service on 6969 when you hit the 7901 for the final project container. It's forwarding that, proxying that request over to the HP service to serve the home page, and then serving /courses from within itself. So that way it can keep the same nested courses structure, but serve it out of that standard index HTML folder. And everything seems to be working correctly. So we can Control D, and because we have restart, even though that shell, which is the main job, exited, it should restart itself, and the watchdog container should still be there for people to attach to. So everything looks good here. I'm going to simply Docker compose down to down everything. And let's update our README. So to initialize the structure and volumes, do this. And then to up the compose stack, they can do Docker compose up -d, and to down the compose stack, they can do Docker compose down. And then we should be able to follow our own instructions, and everything should go as planned. Now, because we have, we didn't explain the architecture. So the architecture is, the question was, when a request comes in, where does it go? So when a request comes in, where does it go? How are services connected? Who serves what HTML? So we're going to say requests to single tick marks localhost 8081. We'll say http : / get routed to the final project service, which has a web server on port 7901. And then under there we have for / or for kind of FP service / the container forwards or container proxies to HTTP, whatever that was, proxies to this, and for this /courses, the container serves the pages site stored inside the image at /user share nginx HTML. And then the other one, shift tab, the other one is going to space dash. This one is going to request to, let's see, for the HP service, serves a landing page on port 6969. That comes from a volume. So that's pretty much explains it. Requests to localhost 8081 get routed to the FP service, which has a web server on 7901. So on 7901 / the container proxies to the HP service on 6969. For the /courses, it just serves the pages site that is stored inside the image at user share nginx HTML that came from GitHub. So we can say this came from a GitHub Git repo. And then the HP service serves a landing page on port 6969 that comes from a volume and has a link to localhost 8081 /courses / That pretty much explains the architecture. So we'll do a git status, git add docker compose YAML git commit -m structuring out these services, service configuration for compose stack, git add readme git commit -m documenting structure and completing usage instructions. Okay, so now nothing's running here. I should be able to check git status, git push, so a separate Git repo, the one that had the Docker configuration in it. We should be able to clone that in a separate repo and replicate our steps without any special choices except for what is well documented in this README. So if that's not possible, I would expect to get a 0 on this. And my repo also would need to be public for whoever is going to clone this, or they would need to be added to it. So mine is private, but yours should probably be public. So we're going to go and cd into .. my code folder, and I'm going to git clone this into docker test. Okay, so we're going to need to clone into another repo, so I'll just call this docker test clone, and I will code docker test clone, and I should be able to follow my instructions exactly. So I'm like a new user. I have all the files I expect to see here. I should be able to click on the README and read it from top to bottom and get how this works and be able to do it exactly. This is a local deployment to serve the GitHub Pages repo. This is how the architecture works. I left some text in here that shouldn't be in here, so we'll have to remove that. But this is how it works. Prerequisites, how it was tested, what's the usage. Okay, so I'm going to open a new terminal and run these commands to set up. Alright, and then I'm going to run my compose up. And I didn't give any instructions about where to look at it, so I should probably put a link in the README for that, because the user isn't necessarily going to know to go to localhost 8081, even though it's in the documentation. And I'll visit the courses page. This works. Okay, So seems like everything worked just fine. The only issue is a little bit of documentation stuff. So I could do this from either repo. I'll just do it from here. So I'm just going to remove this here. Let's just say this is the architecture. And then we will create a link. Say 3, visit the homepage by going to blank in the browser. And that blank will be localhost 8081. So they should be able to click localhost 8081 and it should open their browser and then they can view this. Say click the link you find on the home page, and then 5 to down the compose stack, do this. We'll test that as well. Docker compose down, we'll copy that exactly. And we didn't tell them anything about the watchdog service. So maybe we should say to monitor services attached to the watchdog and curl different services. Docker ps, yeah, Docker compose up-d. So we could say something like this, say like bash Docker compose attach watchdog svc, and then from inside the watchdog C, you could do a sh apk add curl, and then curl the FP service 7901 hits should be proxied to this, curl this hits this, and then curl courses slash should hit the pages site. So let's go ahead and test that. We'll do Docker compose attach watchdog service. Why is the watchdog service not running? We did call it watchdog service, didn't we? Yep, that seems right. Oh, why is there a colon there? Do we need that colon? Semicolon? There we go. Okay. Then we do a curl this. Oh, no. We need to do APK add curl, like we told. Then we do this one. We hit the home page. We do this one. Home page. And we do this one. And we hit the courses. And there we go. And then we'll say use Control C to exit and restart that main shell process. Control C. Nope, Control D. Let's do Control D. There we go, and the shell process stays running as intended. So now this is nicely documented. Docker Compose down, finally. And we will, after we down that, we can git add, git status, git add readme, git, let's just make sure everything looks good in here. Yep. Git commit -m polishing up readme for new users. Git push. And there we go. Super detailed README that lets somebody come in here, use our repo. Everything works exactly as intended, and there's no excess files going up into GitHub. We could have specified manual steps in there, but instead we automated them in this setup, and now we should be pretty much done, where somebody can now clone this and they can do exactly what is here, and they should have the same experience we did because we listed prerequisites and we tested this in a separate repo. So we're pretty much done here. So thank you for watching. It just took about an hour and 50 minutes, going super detailed, and I hope that this has helped you. If you found this confusing to set all of these things up, you see that it's very possible, if you take it one step at a time, to get Docker setups to work very predictably, and then what you're going to see in the future is that you can easily distribute your repo and have somebody else replicate your setup because you've documented it and you've marked up everything that's going to happen in different configuration files and script files. So that's it for this one. Goodbye.